for joining us at Roger and Roger. You just saw the new schedule for Georgia in 2025. It looks a lot like last year. Another difficult schedule. However, Georgia is making preparations to become another excellent football team. Kirby Smart has hit the portal hard. Georgia has definitely been acquiring a lot of good football players. But what about those coaches, Roger? Well, the coaching staff is still up in the air. You've all seen the rumors that Mike Bobo was going to go. That was not necessarily the case, but Kirby Smart will have to take a look at his coaching staff. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, how that affects just every college football team. Think about it, Roger. Your roster changes almost by the minute, but there's almost no continuity. So to succeed, you're going to have coaches that can have high impact on high impact players very quickly, and that brings into question the caliber of coaches, and I think that might be the separation factor in the next few years. When Kirby Smart came along, it was talent separating. And Georgia did have good coaching staffs the early parts of Kirby Smart's reign. It's just they leave. Because they're good, they go somewhere else. It's a constant battle of getting good coaches. And then when you get stuck in a grind of being married to coaches, you put your program into a stagnant situation. We don't know what's going to happen. All the talk around the UGA is that they're going to be rearranging the coaching staffs. It is possible that the wheels are turning. They're turning behind the scenes, and really hard to keep up with what's happening, but we'll definitely be keeping an eye on any developments regarding the coaching at Georgia. Now let's talk about some things regarding the transfer portal. Georgia has been hitting it hard, and as you all know, they've acquired some very key players already, and that's just an ongoing process now. In this episode, we're going to discuss preview the SEC in 2025. We're going to take a look at all 16 teams and try to project the 2025 ranking of SEC teams. That should be very interesting. We'll do that later on, Roger. But before we do that, let's talk about this development we heard where Bobo was saying that Mike Bobo was going to leave due to health reasons, and then he retracted that. What do you make of all that, Roger? Well, I mean, you don't get much better than Bobo. He's the spokesman for UGA. Everybody that wears red and black knows who Bobo is, I would assume, the quarterback. During the 1980 season, he was the guy that handed the ball to Herschel, but he did a lot more than that. He was a very good quarterback and basically a mouthpiece, a spokesman for the program. He's got a radio show. And he said Mike Bobo was going to step down for health reasons. I just don't think that was an accident. I don't see how a guy like Baloo would just throw that out there without it being some purpose to it. And of course, we're recording this before the finals, where Ohio State is taking on Notre Dame. We talked about that game in our last video. My feelings haven't changed. I pretty much feel like Ohio State has a better team, and hopefully they'll win. After watching the NFL playoffs this weekend, I'm certainly glad college football hasn't degraded to the level that NFL has, because those games were a mockery. But, Roger, let's get to our talk of the SEC. That's going to be we got 16 teams to look at. How do you think we should do this? Well, I think we should do it in bunches. Like there's a top, there's a middle, and there's a bottom. And when you get into the certain groups, there's no way to really pick. But we can figure out what clump the teams are going to be in. And then we're going to start that right now. The bottom clump will take that first, and we'll talk about which bottom feeders in the SEC, which ones will be the bottom. Well, we'll start with the bottom clump. Number 16, Mississippi State Bulldogs. After failing to win a game against SEC competition last year, Jeff Levy, he's going to have to prove it to avoid being picked last, and so he's last. Mississippi State, good luck. Number 15, Kentucky Wildcats. Now, for the first time in several years, Kentucky enters 2025 where they kept the staff together on the offensive side of football, and perhaps that benefits a unit that struggled. And there's some new pieces on the team that outsiders are not expecting much from. Kentucky, it looks like they still have a long way to go. Number 14, Arkansas Razorbacks. Sam Pittman returned to the hot seat again. We don't know. We should know by the end of September after the Razorbacks get through Ole Miss, Memphis, and Notre Dame during the opening month. The Vanderbilt Commodores. Diego Pavia returns for the Commodores, who welcome back a slew of starters coming off their best finish under Clark Lee. Getting back to bowl eligibility should happen, but Vanderbilt has to take another monumental leap to be a true contender, Roger. And then we've got Oklahoma. Washington State transfer quarterback John Mateer can quickly mesh with a new group of wideouts in Norman, and the offensive line woes are no longer a worry. And Brent Venables and the Sooners could be a force during the second season in the SEC. Rounding out the bottom barrel, number 11, Auburn Tigers. Auburn's got a chance to be the SEC's most improved team in 2025 if Hugh Freeze correctly identifies the right quarterback. Landing former Oklahoma signal caller Jackson Arnold, that's a win on paper, but will it pan out on the plains? We're beyond giving Freeze the benefit of the doubt based on how his first two seasons have gone for the Tigers. This portal class is really impressive, and the Tigers' weaponry surrounding Arnold ranks among the league's best. The defensive line should be stout as well, with a pair of 5 stars coming in. Everything looks promising in January at Auburn, but we've said this before. Well, Roger, no team in college football restocked their wide receiver group quite like the Aggies of Texas A&M did. They managed to do this with a portal, adding Casey Concepcion from NC State, Mekhi Hudson from Texas Tech, and Mike Elko utilizes a portal-heavy class in 2024 to nearly reach the SEC championship game, and will try and follow the same script next season. Quarterback Marcel Reed takes over as a full-time starter after earning the job with his comeback win over LSU. And at that point, it looked like the best team in the SEC. It was a big moment for Mike Elko, but it turned out to be just a mirage. He finished 1-4 of his last 5 starts, Roger. However, Reed needs to be elite for the Aggies to be a factor in the SEC title race. So they're coming in at 10, Roger. Now we're getting more to the, I guess you could say, the middle of the pack. Now, Roger, it looks like Ole Miss made a massive improvement last year. Obviously, the Georgia Bulldogs think so. And they did improve that defense quite a bit. Now, how are they going to do this year, Roger? Well, when you lose as much talent as the Rebels have in 2025, including Jackson Dart and a wealth of defensive starters, and that's the key, there's going to be some disbelief in the preseason, and here we are. Lane Kiffin has attempted to reload with nearly 24 transfers, highlighted by 3 immediate starters from Arkansas, former Nebraska edge Princewell, how you pronounce his name, Una Million, and LSU edge Deshaun Womack. Ole Miss feels it has playoff potential, and Austin Simmons has big shoes to fill under center. So finishing 9th in the SEC probably isn't playoff territory, Roger. And now for our favorite team last year, the Missouri Tigers. We were both high on Missouri last year, Roger. Adjustments need to be made involving Missouri thanks to a top 10 showing in the transfer portal, including Tuesday's edition of Georgia's Damian Wilson. The best available linebacker this cycle, Ed Drinkwitz, has landed 17 total transfers, including new starters in the secondary at running back and quarterback. Penn State's Bo Pribula, who backed up Drew Allar this fall, will be Missouri's leader at the position. Running back Ahmad Hardy was a freshman All-American this season at Louisiana Monroe. So Missouri hitting the portal the way they have to. We got them pegged at number 8 in the SEC. Now we get into a surprising, Roger, I think this number 7 team is going to surprise everybody. We have the Gators at 7 in the SEC. That's getting in the middle of the pack. Spring enrollees have arrived at Florida ahead of the start of spring practice in a few months as the Gators try and improve on last season's hot finish under Billy Napier. Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown should be immediate contributors at wide receiver as a couple of the gems of the Gators' 2025 signing haul. Make no mistake, Florida's 2025 team will be driven at the helm by sophomore quarterback DJ Lagway. The Gators lost 17 players to the portal this cycle, including 3 likely starters on defense. So, Florida edging back up to the middle of the pack, and that should be enough to keep Billy Napier employed at Florida. Remember, he was almost fired last year. At number 6 in the SEC, we've got the Tennessee Volunteers. The expectation for the Volunteers is Nico developing into one of the league's top players at quarterback, but he's not going to have Dylan Sampson to help him in the run game following his NFL draft entry. Tennessee's starting group of wide receivers will look different as well following the exits of Brew McCoy, Dante Thornton, and Squirrel White. I like Squirrel White, among others. Getting 5-star Mike Matthews back in the fold was important, and Chris Brazel, the 6'5", 210-pounder, should star. Tennessee has used the portal minimally and trusts its depth on defense despite losing everything pass rusher James Pierce Jr. Coming in at number 5, the South Carolina Gamecocks, Roger. Quarterback Lenore Sellers and pass rusher Dylan Stewart are the anchors for the Gamecocks in 2025, coming off a 9-win campaign under Shane Beamer, replacing the production void left by Rocket Sanders at running back and SEC Defensive Player of the Year Kyle Kennard. That's paramount to repeat success for a program that's on the potential of its first playoff appearance. South Carolina has signed a top 20 portal haul in hopes of filling holes, and its 2025 signing class features several 4-star receivers who can make an early impact. The LSU Tigers are hoping a top-rated transfer portal class pays immediate dividends for Brian Kelly, who set the bar high with expectations being a playoff team in 2025. Garrett Nussmeier returns at quarterback, and an upgraded wideout room promises fireworks. 3 underclassmen are expected to start up front, So that's the position group of importance, Roger. FSU's Patrick Payton and Florida's Jack Pyburn are the new edge starters, and the return of Harry Perkins Jr. at star means LSU's defense could be the best under Kelly entering Blake Baker's second campaign as defensive coordinator. Coming in at number 3, Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama's quarterback competition will be one of the college football's most scrutinized this spring as Kevin Deboer begins his second off-season as coach of the Crimson Tide. Ty Simpson, former Washington transfer Austin Mack, and the 5-star freshman Keelan Russell are in the mix to build an elite passing attack around premier wideout Ryan Williams. People in Tuscaloosa expecting a turnaround are encouraged about the 3 starters returning along the offensive front and veterans throughout all 3 levels of the defense. Number 2, the Georgia Bulldogs, with 2025's second-best signing class on the way in, along with a couple of impact transfers, including USC playmaker Zachariah Branch. Georgia will be on that short list of national championship contenders next season, even with new quarterback Gunnar Stockton taking over for Carson Beck. The schedule remains one of the nation's toughest. We showed you the schedule earlier in the video. But at least the Bulldogs get Alabama and Texas at home in 2025 instead of the alternative. The defending SEC champions must improve up front to get back to Atlanta and ultimately reach the playoff for the 4th time in the last 5 seasons. So, Roger, that doesn't leave much suspense. There's only one team left, and that's the Texas Longhorns. Can Archie Manning and Anthony Hill Jr. carry the Longhorns in 2025, Roger? They might have to, given the mass exodus of talent to the 2025 NFL Draft. That's what happens when you're good, Roger. Nearly the entire offensive line will be replaced. A couple of high-end wideouts and several members of an elite secondary. Texas was my way too early preseason poll in 2025 earlier this month prior to a couple of draft announcements. I still like the Longhorns, Roger, as the SEC front runner, with Quinn Ewers expected to lead the NFL as well. The time is here for Manning. I believe he's an early Heisman candidate, and he needs to assume a leadership role. And Steve Sarkisian is given credit for being one of the best offensive coordinators. So it looks like Texas might have their moment in the sun. They've got all the stars lining. And so it's going to be up to Georgia, maybe Alabama, to maybe challenge that. We'd like to thank you for joining us on this SEC 2025 preview. Thank you for all your marvelous support. And until we meet again, ta-ta.